So is it me, or did it just feel like January flew by? Like I just feel as if I just recorded a Patreon rewards video like yesterday and uploaded it, and only to like have to do it again like almost immediately. It just feels like where what happened in January. So I'm not gonna have a ton of stuff to show for this month. Because what I did was I colored my comic pretty much the entire month. So last month, all I did was put well, I finished the drawing part of the comic, and then I did the lighting in the flatting. So this time I did the coloring, and I did it using a brand new method, which I will talk about in the creation video. And it took some time to do. So but also one of the things that ended up happening this month was that I had a couple of heavy deadlines to hit at work. And when I do heavy deadlines and when I'm working really hard on a specific thing, what ends up happening is that I tend to take very short lunch breaks because I need to get the work done on time, right? So usually what I do is I take an hour lunch break. I have about 30 minutes that I eat, and then I use the last 30 minutes to work on my work, on my comic. But when I'm under the gun, what I tend to do is I tend to take my 30 minutes to eat, and then I go right back to work. I don't even spend the last 30 minutes. I have to hit that deadline, so I have to keep going, which means that I don't get my work done, my own personal work done. That's just the way it is. You have to sacrifice something. So, but I did finish this, and part of the reason why the coloring process took a little longer than it ought to is because I was using a brand new process that I hadn't done before, so I had to figure out how to make it work. So let's take a look at the work for this month and the rewards you're going to be receiving. So this is panel 1, and you can see that it's got a little bit of a different texture. You could see like I am using a different brush here, and I'm using a texture on top, a watercolor texture on top, but that's not what the watercolor look comes from. The actual watercolor look is actually from the brush. The brush is actually the watercolor. A watercolor brush is actually being used here to give it that watercolor look, and I'm hoping that it tends to show. See, but here is a colored pencil. So the lighting, remember the flatting and the lighting I did in the flatting and lighting video, or or if you were looking at the last month's Patreon rewards video, you got to see that this was in gray, black and white, and then you got to see the colors, the white, and this used to be gray, and then this was like an umber, red umber, or a burnt umber. So the burnt umber is still here. It's just covered by the color. It just mixes in with the color. But it's in there. It's in there. It's just that I mixed it in. But the white I didn't. So here it is. It's still kind of visible. So it seems a little bit mixed media, but that's okay. So overall, that's how I colored all of these, is using a brand new watercolor brush. And that's what I did all month was use the watercolor brush to do this sort of thing. And then finally we've got the postcard for this month. So this postcard, I'm trying again to go. The reason it looks the way it does, and it's a little bit different than the stuff that I've been doing before, is now I'm putting like a lot of just black and white, like very very inked colored. It's just an ink drawing colored, and I wanted a more cartoony, almost cell shaded look to these drawings. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. My only problem is that I don't know what it is. I've been using this watercolor Post-it paper from Strathmore Pretty much every single time I do these watercolor postcards, I use these postcard this little postcard booklet. And see, I only got one more left on this booklet, and I'm happy that there's only one more, and here's why. I haven't had a problem with these postcard booklets until I got this one, and this one is terrible. So I was painting this, and the paper started lifting, and in watercolor, that's death. Like, it just ruins the entire point of watercolor paper is so that it doesn't lift, right? That's the entire point. If you want to lift it, if you want to actually like have the watercolor paper lift, usually what you do is you get a razor blade and you're deliberately pulling at it, right? Like, you're deliberately trying to lift the paper and scratch the paper. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to lift when you do it on purpose, not when you're actually putting water on it and then have it just kind of start lifting and falling apart on you. That's just terrible. So this particular, not all the other ones, they worked fine, but this particular postcard pack did not work really well. It started to lift. And what happened, for example, here in this, when I was painting this postcard, I was trying to do this shadow and trying to make it nice and clean and sharp, but it was bleeding in here because it was already lifting. And then what ended up happening was, like, there was a chunk of paper that kind of rolled up and became a different value than I wanted right here on the edge, and it made her look like I had Joker smile all the way up to the side of her cheek. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, get a and I had to like physically grab the piece of paper and pull it out. You shouldn't have to do that when you're doing your painting, man. Like, it's just not okay. That's not okay. So I'm happy to see this pack go. Final sheet of paper. Hopefully this doesn't happen again, and with this one we'll see, but I'm happy that I'm finally at the end of this, so I could open a new pack and see if that is that hopefully the problem doesn't persist in another pack. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to try to find another way to do these postcards, because it's not okay for the watercolor paper to be lifting like that. It's just that's counter the point of watercolor paper. And finally, this is the final comic. The way that it's going to be published, it's going to be lengthwise like this. So this was a whole other thing that I had to do with the comic once it was done. And one of the things here, like, and if you're going to notice here, is that, see, I had to put a hat on this character, because in the original, if you saw it last month, that character didn't have a hat. In fact, what ended up happening was I colored it, I finished it, I started doing, final JPEGs of each panel, only to realize that that character originally, when I introduced that character in the very, 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 very first comic strip, that character was wearing a hat. And then when they get into the place that they're in, that character, I drew the character with a hat, and then I drew this comic strip without him wearing a hat. So after I finished it and I was ready to go and everything, and I had already put it in the long version and everything, I realized, hey, wait a minute, the character's supposed to be wearing a hat. So I had to go back and add a hat. I had a brand new layer, and I had to put a fedora on the character, and that kind of stunk. That slowed me down. I could have been done sooner if it wasn't for the fact that I totally forgot about the fedora. All right, so let's talk about who won this month's postcard. which I have just misplaced. Oh, here it is. Okay. So who won this month's postcard? This month's postcard goes to Brooke Brown. Brooke, you won this month's postcard. Congratulations. I'll be sending it off very soon. And thank you so much, everyone, for supporting me on Patreon. It means the world. It's so helpful. Believe me, every little bit counts. It allows me to buy like art supplies and things like that. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time. All right, bye.